start, yes?
Okay, Itai.
Yes.
Welcome, podcast number 8.
Yes, number 8.
I think it is. And this will be our second one to be uploaded.
Exactly.
And last time we ended off speaking about boxing. What do we have in for?
Oh, what?
What do we have in for tonight?
Various subjects, but let's not forget that the fight is taking place tonight. Tonight it's the fight. It's not that I'm going to speak now about boxing all the way through, but yesterday they are fighting. We are talking about Benavidez versus Plant. I saw the last press conference, fairly charged, and then the weight in and the face-off. Plant put an hand on Benavidez and Benavidez threw his hand, and there was some they need to be separated, but I would not make too much out of it. I think they both of them know that the fight is going to be kept for the ring.
Yeah.
That's what I can say. I just want.
And who do you think Benavidez is going to win?
Benavidez is the favorite.
Benavidez.
Not necessarily. I'm saying he's the favorite.
He's the favorite?
Yes. I think from Bookie's point of view, he's considered to be the favorite. I think that's what I've heard. I don't know. I'm not into gambling. But according to his record, you can say, because he's the one who got a lot of knockouts under his belt. For me, the only thing I wanted to say is that Caleb Plant, he came very confident, or at least he wanted to show that he's very confident. Some people made comments that they think that he is inside the head of Benavidez. I doubt it. I doubt that he's in the head of Benavidez, because Benavidez is a very aggressive fighter. He throws a lot of punches. He's a volume puncher. I don't think anything is going to affect him in that sense. I mean, you can throw a person off his game plan in some ways, but he's not going to be intimidated, or he's not going to think that if Plant is not intimidated by him, then he lost all his all his power, coming to this fight, because he's such an intimidating fighter. This is how he fights. He fights very aggressively. He fights with the idea, with the goal of knocking out his opponents. So that's what will happen anyway.
We'll see what happens.
I mean, I'm not saying necessarily that he's going to win the fight. I'm just saying that will be what he will do. Yeah. So, yes, so that's about it. So that's happening, and this is happening tonight, the fight. Yeah. Other than that, do you have anything you want to say? I mean,
No, I just want Caleb to win. Caleb, I would like him to win.
You liked him?
I do. I think he's calm. Yes, the way he acted on his previous fight was a bit childish. When he knocked the guy out and then
he did the shovel gesture.
That was a bit childish, but I think
as well, yes.
He shows a little bit calm and collective.
Yeah, but I wonder if it's a facade, maybe.
Could be, but at the end of the day, I must say, from the interview, he wasn't belittling Benavidez. He was, that's the way the persona that I did. And whether I think he's got a very strong left hand, left hook. Caleb, and if he socks you one, that's it. You're down. Benavidez, obviously, I don't know. We'll see later on. We'll go watch the fight.
Yes, I will definitely check it. I think I'm not in real time. I doubt if I'm not.
No, I also won't say real time.
But for me personally, I like Benavidez. I like his style of fighting, and I like the personality. I think it brings nice excitement to that division.
But he was at the interview. His language was just not on, but that's how fighters are. Yeah,
you didn't like his language.
No. It showed the lack of professionalism, a bit of childishness.
Yeah, maybe look, I look at it, Kaz D'Amato, of course, we're talking about the guy who taught Mike Tyson everything about boxing, and more than just boxing. He said that when you're a professional fighter, you have to come to the ring with bad intentions. This is what he liked about Tyson. You understand? You come with bad intentions. Now, bad intentions is not necessarily that you come and speak a lot of bad things about your opponent, but you come with bad intentions into the ring. So, fighter, it's like they said about Jack Dempsey. Do you know the name Jack Dempsey? Have you heard about him? He was probably the first superstar of the sport. He was an heavyweight champion. Belongs to the beginning of the 20th century, and he really transcended the sport. He was like. After him, the only person that I think that managed to transcend the sport, okay, you had Joe Louis, definitely, but Muhammad Ali is probably as close as... Muhammad Ali did it bigger than Dempsey in some ways, but he was a superstar of the sport, and he was a very vicious heavyweight. It's interesting. So Jack Sharkey, I'll tell you something. Jack Sharkey was an heavyweight that managed to fight against Dempsey and Joe Louis, and they belong to different eras. So he actually fought two of the greatest heavyweights. And they asked him what is the difference between them, and he said, Jack Dempsey, when Joe Louis knocks you out, because both of them were devastating punches. So he said, Joe Louis knocks you out, and then he said, oh, I'm sorry that I knocked you out. Jack Dempsey knocks you out, and he says to you, are you intending to rise from the canvas? Stay there. Don't dare coming.
Yeah.
Don't dare standing or something like that. You better stay on the canvas. He was a very mean guy in the ring, but someone said that it would be ridiculous to believe that a person can be like that just in the ring. That there is something about this man. He said something about fighters, not all of them, but something about fighters, that they have to be sometimes even vicious outside the ring. All the personality, disposition has to be with certain bad intentions. They got to be dogs in that sense. So they be always about their territories.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I agree with that. There's a couple of sports.
No, I'm not saying necessarily, but I'm just saying. Yes.
I'm not sure if I agree. Like, we look at all the sports that exist, right? Mm-hmm. The nicest sports to watch are the ones where, in my opinion, are the ones where the people that are participating in the sport are gentlemen.
Yes.
You're right?
I agree. Yeah.
That's, so for example, like rugby. Yeah, when you watch rugby, they don't curse out the ref. Like they do in football. Football's a terrible, terrible sport. It has no morals. It absolutely encourages the young to have no respect for authority. The way that the players swear at the ref. I mean, it's just a disgraceful sport, in my opinion.
I can, by the way, see where you're coming from, but I think that the more physical contact you got, if you play a game like rugby, which can be very rough physically, like boxing, so you have more respect for what is happening.
But at the end of the day, when you watch, but besides for that, but if you look at rugby, cricket, and boxing, and this maybe your point actually stands. When they're on the field, there's a lot of aggression.
Yes.
There's a lot of aggression on the field, and with cricket, obviously, there's a lot of slight, like they the word is they chirp each other, or they say stuff about somebody, to like put the other guy on a not necessarily to take him off his game, but their respect for authority, for the ref, for the umpire, stands. And I think in boxing it's the same, actually.
Yes, no, it definitely should be a gentleman's sport. I think that Joe Louis was a great gentleman. Rocky Marciano carried himself as a gentleman as well in the way he spoke about his opponents from interviews when I've heard him on interviews, most of them. I don't think that there is necessarily contradictions, but of course there are different personalities. But someone like Dempsey, for example, he could have been a gentleman, but he's still a dog. You know what I mean? He got this thing about him that he got to make sure, because he's part of this reality that is so different to anything else. This is not like no other profession. Being a prize fighter, being someone, you got into, there's a square, you get inside this square, and suddenly all the rules, all the laws that you know outside don't exist anymore. You can actually kill someone there.
Yeah.
You, as it was once said, I think it was in a film with Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas. He had his bar mitzvah at the age of 100. What was it exactly? With Kirk Douglas, great film that anyone who likes boxing should watch, by the name of Champion. I think it was made in 48 or 49. And he plays a prize fighter, a guy that becomes a prize fighter. So he goes to this manager and he tells him, I want to be a prize fighter. So he told him, what do you want to be a prize fighter? For what? It's a terrible thing it's a terrible hassle to be part of. He said to him, in the ring, you are going to get paid for something that outside the ring you will be arrested. You understand?
Correct,
so this is very strange occupation. So you have to have certain strange mentality for it as well. So I don't necessarily judge. I don't like fighters that are just into trash talking and disrespect. That's not what I like. But I think that sometimes you have to understand that these people, these men, have to be different in the way that they approach certain things, and even press conferences.
I think you're right. I think it's to get into the psyche of the other person. It means the way they speak to, no?
But yes,
I don't think it's a psychological battle.
They play mind games, and mind games actually pay dividends if you do them correctly. But I think it's mostly for themselves. I told you, it's like Muhammad Ali. He played the mind games for himself. You could see that not just for the sake of defeating the other man, but he actually played it because he knew that it will help him overcome his fears. He built to himself. He used to build himself up. I'll tell you something. They said that in Zaire, when he was getting ready to fight George Foreman, so they had to practice in the same gym.
That's weird.
Yeah, but that's the arrangement because you're in a foreign country, you're in Africa. It's not like you're in the States. This is where you were born, and you got your own gym, and it's not the same. So they used to practice at the same gym, and they said that let's say Foreman have his session before he has his session before Ali. He punches the bag, and then Ali comes after him, and Ali intentionally moving his head just like that. He doesn't want to look at the bag because he doesn't want to see the crates. Foreman was so powerful; he would leave crates on the boxing bag. So Ali didn't want to look at it because he knew if I look at it, I might start doubting. You see, so it's a lot of times I think fighters are doing it also to pump themselves, to make themselves feel more confidence, but of course to play with the minds of other people. Because if you remember Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard, so they had a great fight between them. Both of them were more or less past their best. But Sugar Ray Leonard managed to defeat him in a fight that is considered to be controversial. I think that he won it, although I love Marvin Hagler, I really love him, and I felt so sorry for him that he lost that fight. But Ray Leonard, in a way, managed to psychologically dismantle him. You know, that's how he won the fight. He won it by getting the upper end psychologically.
Yeah, because once you add doubt into yourself. If someone plants doubt into you or lack of confidence, you lose the fight. Yes. You lose anything.
Yeah, of course. To be mentally strong is a key thing. I told you, Kaz D'Amato said 75% of the makeup of a great fighter is this mentality. 25% is the skill. And it goes to any sport. It can go to chess. It can go to anything that will do. I mean, chess is a very mental sport anyway. But for any other sport, even if it's a physical sport. So yes, that's the thing. That I think that some fighters have to show this certain personality, or it's part of them, you know. And
I'm just thinking that this shouldn't be something just for the ring. There should be, is this something that's implemented in our lives, our daily lives? Is it something we should implement in our daily lives or not?
Oh, I would like you to explain further your question in more details. I want to tell you something. For me, before you do it, for me, my love for the ring is for various reasons, but one of them is because it's a microcosm of reality. Even though it's different, we spoke about it already. Of course, you can do in the ring things that you do, otherwise you will get arrested. You be thrown to prison. But at the same time, there are so many similarities, so many parallels between whatever is happening. It can actually project on the outside, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Tell me what you want.
No. So my question is that can you live? You know, should we, from a moral standpoint, let's take that. You know, be aggressive to our common foe. So, for example, let's say you have in business, or you have a competitor. Should we be aggressive? Should we be that way inclined? You know, or any opposite to you. If you're trying to achieve something, so I'm saying, should we take that lesson? Should we look at boxing and look at that attitude, or any sport, and implement that as a life lesson, or is it something which just for the ring? Now you're saying it's not. You're saying that actually boxing is something that we can learn lessons for in our lives because it is a picture of our lives. But what do you mean by that?
That's what I want to say. So I think that there are some lessons we can take from it, and some we better not take. It depends. Look, I personally don't think that we should be predatory to each other in our daily life, and even if it means that we are going to be better in our business and we're going to make more money. I don't necessarily think it's correct to be so aggressive about something. If you're a competitor, if you're a part of sports, in sports, yes, the aim is to win. But sports are almost an isolated activity where there are some people who are actually going to specialize. I mean, you can play sports in the weekend recreationally, so you do it for fun and you're aiming for winning. Okay, fine.
But isn't everything in life aiming for winning?
You can say, but again, It's a good question. I personally don't really want to apply the same attitude of the ring into daily life when it comes to that particular discipline, because we are talking about people who are actually getting into the ring knowing that they can kill someone or they can die. So this is something a bit more extreme or radical than what you would call daily life. I can see, like I told you, you can learn a lot. What I learned from the ring that you can project to outside the ring is sometimes you see fighters getting punched so badly and they are in such bad state, but they will come back. You know, someone like Juan Manuel Marquez, let me tell you, he fought Manny Pacquiao 4 times. And Manny Pacquiao is one of the greatest fighters. I think he was the fighter of the decade by Ring Magazine in 2010. I think they picked him for fighter of the decade. I don't remember exactly what was it, but he belongs to. He was at his prime until not long ago, and maybe around 2013, something like that, 2012. But Manny Pacquiao fought Juan Manuel Marquez, both of them legends. And Marquez is the type of fighter, he was extremely educated, great counter-puncher. You have to watch him, I'll send you things. He is one of my favorite fighters. And in the first fight between them, he got knocked down so badly and so many times in the first round, you would not believe that a man like that can come back. Right. But he managed to create such a close fight, simply because he has this thing in him that he will never
give up.
He'll never give up, and he'll always find a way, and he'll always keep himself composed. And he's such an intellectual in the ring as well. His ring IQ. I'm not talking about what he is outside the ring, but he has such a great ring IQ, and he got such a character in him, and he's such a warrior that you look at it and you can only admire the way that he behaves, and you can learn lessons for that. So I prefer this type of lesson. Maybe I can apply. Maybe I can prefer the other lesson. I can say maybe I should be aggressive. It's about you. You'll decide. I personally don't want people to be too predatory to each other, but in the ring, there is a strong gladiatorial element to it, and yes, you have to take it into consideration.
It's like also the Tyson Fury when he got knocked down by
Wilder.
Yes, and then he came back,
Yeah.
and he drew the fight.
Yes, it was
incredible.
It was a very close fight. Yes.
So I think you're right. I think in boxing there are these 2 elements. There's the aggressive element and there's the not giving up element. But in a way, I think our I'm just thinking if you want to succeed, yes, I don't think you can succeed without being aggressive.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm not saying that it's not necessary. Definitely necessary. But I personally I don't think it's something I would like to see in society. This is a lesson that society should take. But if you want to be successful, you probably need to.
I'll tell you something interesting. So the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, Reb Shneur Zalman, he has a whole chapter about how our fight with our Yetzer Hara, with our evil inclinations, is a fight of 2 wrestlers. It's basically, that's what it is. It's 2 kings who go to war and fight. And he says that whoever's lazy loses. That's what he says.
Okay, no, it's not bad.
So he brings a martial of, you want to call it wrestling, boxing, because boxing is a very close, it's not like a far fight. You have a fight where you throw missiles. But he compares it to...
That's what makes it so moral as well. That's the next point. But
yeah, but how the fight with yourself, whether to do something good or bad, whatever's pushing you is the fight of, you can say that he brings an analogy of boxing or wrestling with your enemy. Yeah. So we see that you can learn, but you have to, I think, you have to be aggressive, you have to be on top, because once you're not and you don't, then the other side will take over.
No, it's a positive aggression, definitely.
But also, I think your point also comes that even though you are lazy and you do get knocked down, you got to remember that you still have the opportunity to come back.
Yes,
and it's actually it's actually interesting how the Alter Rebbe brings that marshal now. Did you know that he brought that marshal?
I didn't know about that. I read a bit of the Tanya. I didn't know about that. I can tell you again. I can understand it. When I'm competing, and it's not even competing. Think about playing music. When I went on stages, I always went with these bad intentions, like Tyson. I went in order to make sure that after me the stage is not going to look the same. Meaning, so that's not a boxing fight, but that means that I'm there to make a statement, and I'm going to make a statement that I'm going to give the best piece of drumming humanly possible within the.
Yeah, but why do you look at that so negative?
No, I'm not saying it's negative. I'm just saying that was not negative at all. It was great because it means that every time I push myself to the limit, like it was my last night. It's good. It's important. I'm just saying that. I'm not necessarily sure that I would like everyone to be constantly aggressive about everything they do when it comes to business or when it comes to you ask me about
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. But again, this is I can understand that it's very important if you want to be successful at something.
But don't you think you have to implement that all spheres?
Yeah,
Yes. That code fits everywhere. No.
Yes, well, again, I'm not a big fan of what they call like aggressive business people, or let's say cutthroat businessmen. Or that's personally me, but I understand that it's important if you want to succeed in that area, you need to do it. But I think for me, again, the lessons that I learned from the ring, beside getting knocked down and then coming back. You can learn so many other things because it's a very moral sport if you think about it.
You said something about how because it's close contact it's moral.
Yeah, it's very moral.
Can you explain that?
Yes, when I say moral, I'm not talking about from godly point of view. That's not what I'm talking about. But I think from earthly point of view, at least, something about it is so remarkable because you got two men inside the ring. And they just have boxing gloves on their hands, which means not much, and they really have to go and try to dig deep into all the resources that a human being can bring when it comes to how much you can take, how much you can. This is not even about the physical endurance, the physical durability of someone. I'll tell you something. Floyd Patterson, who was an heavyweight champion of the world. He was Cas D'Amato's student, and he was the youngest, I told you, before Mike Tyson took the record from him. Every time he lost a fight, he used to get himself dressed. He used to put... he actually went and learned, I think, in one of these film school, how to put makeup on himself to create a new personality. And then he used to escape sometimes he used to escape from the country because he could not deal with defeat. Mentally speaking, he was so ashamed and he felt so difficult with himself that he lost the fight. You need to be very strong to do something like that, to be able to get into the ring when you got so many people around you shouting and you know what it means. I think it was Jose Torres, the same guy who wrote the book about Mike Tyson, and he also was a champion of Cas D'Amato. He said something like that. He said, all of us fighters, believe me, none of us is really afraid of getting beaten up. Physically, you can beat us up as much as you want. This is our job, to get beaten up. We are there to win, to be the other guy, but we understand we have to get beaten up as well in the process. But we are afraid of losing the fight. We are afraid of what it means psychologically, dealing with that mentally.
It's so funny you say that because it's so beautiful because the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, says the same thing. Do you know that?
Tell me.
He says that when a lot of the time we get depressed because we do the wrong thing, and that can bring us down, completely down. It's like the worst thing. Depression or failure is actually is like the worst thing that can happen to us, and that can lead to serious depression. And it's very similar to the fighters. The Tanya comes along and says the failure is only the purpose and the reason for failure is in order to reach higher than where you originally came from, is to achieve higher. And I'm sure that's the same in boxing. I'm sure.
Yes,
I'm sure.
absolutely.
That if you look at every failure, the failure was, and if I tell you now that the Alter Rebbe, Shneur Zalman says that failure brings you much higher than where you came from before. I bet you can be able to tell me any boxing story about a fighter who lost and came back much better.
Definitely the
Foreman.
Yes, Foreman. Oh, great! You beat me to the punch.
Yes, but I'm saying I want somebody else.
You're right. No. Let me tell you something. First,
better than he was before. I'm saying more disciplined, more better.
Foreman is definitely a great example. I'll try to think about others. I think that Manny Pacquiao, when he lost the fight to Eric Morales, he fought against Eric Morales, another great Mexican fighter. And he lost the first fight, And it was heartbreaking to see him. He was actually crying after that. Manny Pacquiao he came from such a difficult background. All of them came anyway, Morales as well. It's people who really worked hard to get where they managed to get. Yeah, it's just legends of our times. And then he came and he absolutely ate the canvas with Morales. The second time, the second in the rematch. And then in the third fight, he stopped Morales very badly. That's one example, but I'll tell you something that comes to my mind. Sugar Ray Robinson, he was the greatest fighter of them all. Now, I don't necessarily think that he came bigger than what he was, but I can tell you definitely that he showed his greatness of character or greatness as a fighter when he fought Randy Turpin. Randy Turpin was a fighter from this country, magnificent fighter, extremely capable, very strong. And what happened is that Ray Robinson, because he was so famous and so successful, he did a tour of Europe at a certain point. So I think he fought 7 fights in a row, and every fight was every week a fight, just like that. It's not like today that they are fighting 2 fights a year. He fought every week, almost like every week or every 8 days. And his last fight was here. And he fought against Randy Turpin, who was a very strong opponent. And by that time, Ray Robinson was already after 6 fights, very tired, partied a lot. Women loved him. He really allowed himself to beat people up and then party. And when he came to Randy Turpin, he lost. And that was a shocking loss. Ray Robinson was the greatest, lost to a fighter from this country. I think that the day after, the Queen called him. Called Randy Turpin, told him, come, you have to come and visit me. Because if he managed to beat Ray Robinson, that's something, that's one of the greatest achievements that you can ever talk about. You can say, no, he beat Ray Robinson. Who did you beat? He beat Ray Robinson. And Ray Robinson was his prime. Only 3 people beat Ray Robinson in his prime. Jack LaMotta, The Raging Bull. Do you remember the Martin Scorsese film? The Raging Bull, that's how they call it. But his name was the Bronx Bull, but they call it the Raging Bull, the film. He apparently was Jewish. He says that his mother is Jewish, even though everyone knows him as Italian. Maybe.
Okay, maybe his father is Italian.
Jack LaMotta, yeah. No, he said that his mother is Jewish. But Randy Turpin was one of these very few guys, actually 3, who managed to beat Ray Robinson at his very best. So what happened is that got to have a rematch. I mean, something like that, come on. You beat the best fighter in the world. It's not going to work like that. You got to have a rematch. 60 days after they fought in the States, super dramatic fight, and Ray Robinson had a cut, big cut, above his eyebrow. And I think it was Ruby Goldstein, who was the most famous referee of the time. Goldstein himself used to be a fighter, then became a referee. And he told him, look, this is a nasty cut. Ray, I'm going to stop the fight. I'll tell you another story, by the way.
Was this the rematch?
It's the rematch. He told him, look, man, I'm going to lose. If he loses twice to Randy Turpin, this is just unbelievable.
He gets a second meeting with the Queen.
So, exactly. He becomes part of the role.
OBE. What do they call OBE?
That's easy. Much further than that. But Ray Robinson managed to dig into a place. It's like you got 5 gears, 6, 7. He had a gear that doesn't exist with other people. So he pushed to that gear and he managed to catch Randy Turpin, and he put a combination of him that only Ray Robinson could throw such a combination, and he stopped him. I think it was a technical knockout. Man, but you have to see it, the drama that he created. And people were I think people who were at the stadium actually, they probably fainted out of the adrenaline and excitement that was going on there. Yeah. It shows you the greatness of a fighter. He has so much on stake there. He is actually fighting. He knows that he's the greatest, and and everyone knows he's the greatest. And he's in such a trouble with his eyebrow, and he's fighting against a guy who is really determined and really good. And he came. And he stopped him. So to tell you that he was better than he became a better fighter, yes, you know what I believe? Because that's exactly the legend of Ray Robinson. Yeah. You said this is how we remember Ray Robinson. We remember him because he is the guy. Exactly, it happened again with Gene Fullmer. Gene Fullmer gave him, that's after his prime, but Gene Fullmer gave him a really bad fight, and Fullmer was a rough guy, very strong, very awkward, style that is difficult to deal with. and he caught him a lot, and he stopped. It was very ugly fight to watch, but very important. If you want to learn dirty boxing, that's the fight for you, and it's important because that can actually save you or actually win you a fight.
No, so just go back to the Alter Rebbe. That's what he says. He basically. I think that's his point. I think that he actually when you're challenged, that's when your essence comes out. That's when the real you comes out when you're challenged. You know, and you do go. When I mean you go on a higher, means once you have challenges, that's when your essence comes out. When for example, his real fighting greatness came out when he was challenged, not before.
And you're right, No, I agree. That's what I'm saying. That's what made him great. That's what defines his greatness. Because for me, all I can do is read the history, watch some of the films that still exist. So I know the story already, right? For the people who didn't know the story, it happened for them in real time. It was just about to happen. They lived in a certain present and heading to the future every fraction of a second. But I know what happened, but yes, for me, this is how his greatness is defined, because he managed to bypass incredible obstacles and do things like that. It's incredible.
Right. So this message of boxing is actually something that we have to take on ourselves, that every single one of us have these, these challenges in whatever the challenge are in our lives, whatever they are. Sometimes we think, oh, it's a challenge, and then, I'm conditioned by the challenge. When actually, if you take Ray Robinson, that the challenge is there to actually reveal who we really are, our greatness, and if we should enjoy the challenge.
Definitely, I think I don't know, it's hard to say. I don't know.
Obviously, every challenge is different. I'm not saying, but I'm saying in general, it's a very Jewish concept, by the way. It's a very Jewish concept.
I think that it's I can see absolutely why you can enjoy a challenge and why a challenge is so satisfying and so fulfilling. Look, it's for me again, it's a measurement of the greatness of a fighter. Put aside the technique of Ray Robinson, the durability, the punch, everything that he had, the IQ. It's all great. It's all important. Otherwise, he would not have been Ray Robinson. But it's this mentality, it's that human spirit, if you want to call it this way. It's the human spirit. Him, and also who had it in huge quantities. Rocky Marciano had it as well, and he is a guy who would prevail against all odds, and he never lost a fight.
Also Braddock, actually.
Oh, okay.
No.
You know what?
He came from he had different challenges.
You talk about Cinderella, man.
Yeah.
Yes, well, he was a tough guy, man. He was one of the tough guys. I think that he fought a lot of fights like all the other old school guys, and the only person who ever stopped him was Joe Louis.
Yeah.
After that, he was finished. I think he was stopped once. He fought 2 more times, and then he stopped again and finished his career. But I think he was only really stopped by Joe Louis.
Yeah.
And that's not a small thing when he.
But it was a comeback. He had a comeback. All greats have comebacks.
Yes. No? Well, after Joe Louis, it was the end of his career. Look,
he was very old, no?
Yeah, he had enough. I don't remember exactly his age, but he had many fights under his belt. Honestly, he should have. I mean, today no one fights as many fights. By that stage, he should have retired. But we had, by the way, a great Jewish fighter that was considered to be the greatest lightweight in history up until the moment that Roberto Duran came to the scene. In the late 60s. Do you know about Roberto Duran? Have you heard about it?
No, I haven't heard.
Manos de Piedra, the Hands of Stone. He was in the mix in the 80s with Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, and Thomas Hearns, and he's definitely one of the greatest fighters ever. I think that by talent, natural talent, the greatest I've ever seen, or maybe the greatest of modern time. But up until the days of Duran, Benny Leonard, a Jewish man, he was considered to be the best lightweight. He was a very smart fighter. And it's amazing because back then they used to have a lot of fights, but they retired very early as well. I think he retired at the age of 28. 28 was already retired. And he had a lot of... He had
and he was a lightweight?
Yes, he had a great career.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. A Jewish man. He was not a big guy, but he was very smart.
And earned his money and ran.
Yeah. But that's the thing. You know what? It's a very sad story because apparently he lost most of his money in investments, and he needed to make a comeback. And that was not good for him. This is never good, all these comebacks when you're getting older and then you have to take fights against younger
You should just do
people.
commentating.
You know, this is the same story with Ray Robinson. He had to make a comeback and it was very sad comeback as well. Unfortunately, he tried to do something else. He tried to be an entertainer, Ray Robinson. He wanted to do tap dancing. He used to be a tap dancer. Of course, you understand the relationship between, I mean, it's all about rhythm. But that was not good enough. You know, people wanted to pay money to see Ray Robinson fight. This is where he got really disillusioned, I think, with the sport and pretty disappointed. That's the way it is. Most of the fighters ended up in not in the most favorable state when they ended their careers. So. But yeah, it's a great, but there are great triumphs in the ring, definitely, which you can find parallels in the Tanya.
I think. Listen, the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, he said that everything, we have to learn lessons from everything. We have to learn life lessons.
For you, everything is Torah. You told me once. It's amazing.
Yeah, you have to learn. So it's impossible. You can have a sport, have any situation which doesn't teach you a lesson or give you some lesson. It's impossible, you know. And I was just thinking with because we're talking about boxing or anything, but any sport. It's just whilst we're talking, these thoughts came to my mind, because a lot of people, myself included, when you're stuck with a challenge, when you're stuck with all these, whatever they are, these pressures, and you break down. You know, you can't. You know, when actually you need to look at them as more like a propeller. You know, it's like a catapult. That's the reason, you know. That's I'm saying. The more we look at these events, you know, and the more that we can hopefully realize that the challenge is not the end; it's just the beginning, you know.
Yeah, I understand. And the challenge, of course, is, as like we said, is mentioned, and it's important to make it clear. It's mental. It's also very much a mental challenge. It's not just physical. People would like to believe maybe boxing is just about the physical aspect of it. If you got knocked out, it's because your brain got short circuit, you know, and that's it. But it's not.
It's not.
You have to deal with the defeat. You have to deal with the psychological implications, and it's not easy to deal with adversity in the ring. But great fighters had this winning thing about them. Had this, again, extra gear. It's unbelievable to see it.
Do you think everybody has that possibility?
You know what? I don't know if everyone got it. I'm not sure about it, but I'll tell you something. I think that great champions are not necessarily the people that are not necessarily the type of guys that people would like to believe that they have what it takes to become great champions. I think that sometimes you had kids or young, let's say teenagers coming to the gym. You might not be impressed by them. They might not be the most talented physically, or don't have the greatest coordination, or not naturally gifted with punching power, but they have strong mentality, or something about them is very willing to study, to be educated, to actually follow instructions. And if you follow the instructions, if you got a good teacher is like a rabbi, you understand? It's a good rabbi. This is very important in boxing. If you got a student that is willing to study, this person can go very far.
So therefore anybody actually can do it, no?
Yes, I think that everyone
You just have to have the right mindset.
That's what I try to say, that it's very much about the mindset, because it's not so much about...
So you got to really more train people more to have the mindset.
Yes, it's about, I think, you know...
That means they aren't really unique, and I agree with you, there's not, you can say, unique people. There's just, obviously there are unique people, but it's not unique to individuals. Everybody can achieve this.
Yes, first of all, you know, if you want to work on it, doesn't necessarily have to be a natural gift. It's not that you have to be born with the cat-like reflexes. Of course it helps, but it doesn't guarantee you'll be a champion. There are many, you know, especially when people are young, and I mentioned to you a man by the name from Israel, by the name of Jacob Dascalo. He's a genius of boxing, and we spoke a lot about it, and you know, he said once that especially kids when they are boxing, amateurs, and they are becoming teenagers, you can see that because physically some of them are going faster than the others, or some of them just more talented, naturally gifted than the others. You might think, oh, this guy is going to go so far, and then he goes nowhere. But then you see a small guy, a guy that is not necessarily too impressive, works hard, and he becomes a champion.
Yeah.
Because You got
mindset.
It's a mindset. You got the mentality, and usually that's what will happen. Usually, you see this kid. He was because what helped him win actually a fight was because he didn't have to think about it too much. He had the talent or he had the physicality to do it, but he didn't. So he didn't have to think about the mentality. He didn't need to think about what it takes when you have to face an adversity, when you have to face a terrible obstacle, and then you have to defeat your opponent when the odds are against.
So let me ask you a question. Yeah.
Yes.
Out of all the sports that are available, yeah, why did boxing tick something in you?
Because I look at it as a form of art. I think that there is a lot of art history in it. I thought it's comparable to jazz when it's really great boxing for me. And also again, it speaks a lot about it speaks a lot about the human spirit, the human nature.
So just go back one second. When you say it's like art, you can say that about ballet.
Oh, but
You can
it's
say
ballet.
that about
It's
rugby,
ballet.
cricket.
It is like ballet, boxing.
Every sport is an art.
Possible, but but I also like. I'm not saying that other sports are not artistic, but I'll tell you, I like. Before I was into boxing, I still like it, but I used to be really, really interested in bicycle racing. Tour de France, Giro d'Italia.
Until all the drugs came in.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think the drugs existed long before, but it was just
Formula One.
Formula One I liked as well. But I'll tell you something. When I looked at cycling, I think it's a wonderful and very harmonious form of sport. I mean, of course, if you ride the Tour de France, this is a superhuman effort that you have to invest. I don't know, it's difficult to call it harmonious anymore. But something about cycling is so beautiful and so pure and calming, and it's so slick, and it's so it's a beautiful thing to become one part with your bicycle. But I don't see necessarily too much artistry. There is strategy, there is beauty in it. I'm not talking about technical riding, I don't know, off-road, or I'm just talking about riding that is more about your consistency in time trials, or climbing mountains if you're a specialist in climbing, or you know what I mean, or sprinting. That's what I'm talking about. But with boxing, there is a lot of artistry and there is a lot of science to it as well. I think it's art and science. They call it the sweet science. If you actually try to understand a fight, you see.
So let's just go back. So there's an art element to boxing. Can you explain, just for myself, because you are an artist.
Yes.
Yeah? You do art also.
Yeah, I like art a lot.
You like art and you do art. I also like art. Can you pinpoint in boxing the art element? What is the similar? Where do you say that this is art? This is an art.
Look, if you have to compare it with drumming, for example, I'm a drummer. There's a lot of rhythm there. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of coordination. You need to coordinate your moves, because boxing is very much about your feet. Very much about your feet. No less, and maybe even more than it's about your hands. Because
So rhythm is what makes it artistic.
very much. Not just rhythm, but rhythm is in the center of it. You have to know how to move. You have to have good movement, and throwing punches. You have to be rhythmic about it as well. And just to see a punch being thrown correctly as well, you understand. It's like, let me tell you, if you see a drummer playing. You can take 1,000 drummers and all of them can play well, but there are some people who got such beautiful sound because they got great dexterity. They actually invested the time in learning how to put their notes correct together. The volume sound good. Everything is harmonized. They know how to use dynamics. And with boxing as well, you can see a fighter who who got a great textbook technique. Not that you necessarily need to have just a textbook technique, but some fighters just look wonderful. Look at the way that they throw a jab or hook, or it just.
So when you watch boxing, you're watching an artist at work. Like a jazz drummer.
Yes, exactly. When you watch the right, and of course that of course keeping in mind that we are talking. It's like, let me explain. The actual artistry, the composition that is happening. Because if you go on stage and you play jazz music, so most people know that jazz has a lot of improvisation in it. But usually what happens is that you got themes, you got standards. Often. So you got a certain melody, you take the melody and you start playing with it. So you got it as a motive or something like that, and then you start developing it and improvising around it, and you can find yourself in a complete different territory because you started somewhere, and then someone improvised and threw the band into a completely different, unknown, uncharted territory. It happens.
And does the band follow?
And the band follows, or the band goes back, or the band does something new out of it. Who knows? You can never know where you're going to end up. It's the unknown. Fights are very similar. I mean, you can predict in a way what is going to happen because you study the fights.
The fighters, and
you study the fighter, you study the opponent. You got a coach, a trainer, a boxing teacher, if you want to call it, and that studies the opponent, study the habits, study the style. So you know what you're going to be facing. You study previous fights as well. But at the same time, you're still going into the unknown, right? Something there is going to happen. It's not a scripted show. This is something that you have to go into the unknown, and you don't understand. You can be caught with a certain punch, and this is where you should be a real artist. You should be a thinker as well in the ring if you want to be good at what you do.
So your definition of an artist is a rhythm with unlimited goal, with unlimited destinations. And therefore, and
you find
it's like being in a cave. It's like being in a place where you have hundreds and thousands of doors, of endless, and each door can lead you anywhere else, and you decide which door you're going in.
Yes, you need to
depending on the situation.
Yes, you need to find solutions in real time, and you're under a lot of pressure, and you have to be very quick with your reactions. But then at the same time, you have to be thinking through that. You have to think a few steps ahead. It's a lot of people like comparing boxing to chess. Well, the issue is like that. If you speak about chess, you need.
Is chess an artistic?
Beautiful form of art. Yes, amazing art in my opinion. But before going there, I'll tell you that again, a lot of people like using this analogy. Boxing is like chess. They don't even know what it means. They just like using it. But
boxing is like chess?
Yes, a lot of people.
Because of strategy.
Yeah, you hear it. Yes, you hear it today a lot. But from fighters, that you hear it sometimes with people trying to compare boxing with chess, when they want to show you that there is an IQ behind the punches. But in reality, a lot of fights you see not necessarily are clever fights. They are not chess fights. But in the past, not just in the past, you can see today as well, but it was more in the days of the old school. You could see that fights were really like chess, because the fighters had to really think ahead, and they really had to use every trick in their disposal in order to win. So there you saw a lot of feintings, a lot of long term, long distance type of strategies. Exactly. It was not just about I'm just very
just
tough.
Gonna go punch.
Yeah, I'm going to take enough. I can take enough beating, but enough beating to beat the other guy. You understand? Something like that. Boxing is really a smart sport when you let the right fighters show you how a great fight can turn to be. I'm just trying to put it correctly.
No, it's just incredible how it's. Your interests are jazz, chess, mathematics, boxing, and they're all in the same. You can put them all in the same box.
Yeah, it's all art history. It's all science. You have to apply all this. You have to apply, I think, same methods and thinking to the subjects. Boxing as well. The thing about boxing is that many fights people are going to view them as just in a very brutal engagement between two parties, but it's not like that. I mean, again,
I think you showed me. I think you showed me a fight between. I think it was Joe Louis.
Oh yes.
How it was very much like chess, a chess game.
Oh yeah,
he was fighting Max
Schmeling?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And how he sized him up until he got that whole exactly his distance, and then he knocked him out.
Yeah, fantastic fight. That was the second fight, very very important fight in human history, not just in boxing history. Yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. That you can reach incredible peaks. And when I watched boxing, I remember, the fighter that made me fall in love with the sport was actually Henry Armstrong. He is a fighter from the old school, and he fought in the same days of Joe Louis. But he was a small guy, and he was a superstar, even though he was a small guy. Because back in the day, heavyweights were really the greatest stars of boxing. So, but he was so good at what he did. And his idea was volume punching, and very rhythmic fighter. They call it perpetual motion. He never stopped. Ta, 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 ta. And I loved him because of the energy that he had in him. But it's not just the energy. Something about him was so attractive, so romantic about the character, about the way he fought, and I also liked aesthetically looking at his fighting. So I think that immediately the mechanics and the artistry captured my imagination. Although he was not necessarily a pure boxer, he was not one of these boxers. Ray Robinson is the type of fighter that you looked at him, he looked beautiful in the ring. He had great style outside the ring, you know, people always, a great wrestler, he looked good because he kept himself, he was very clean because he had great defense as well, you know, so he was not one of these guys who look like they've been punched with million different punches. But inside the ring he looked good as well. You know, you could see aesthetically the way he moved, the way he threw his punches, the way he held his hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's actually very fascinating. Yeah. I didn't look at boxing like that. I mean, yes, it's artistic, but I can see now.
You need to watch the right fights. I cannot blame someone who thinks about it as a
I see a lot of strategy in boxing,
Yes.
which is chess, which is, you know, it's a lot. It's not. I don't see it just as two guys just punching each other.
No,
I don't see that at all. I think it's very calculated. You know.
I think again that it has to do with the type of fights that you're going to be watching. If you're watching fights like, let's say, whatever exists on the internet of Jersey Joe Walcott against Ezra Charles, this is the type of fighters when you see two incredibly capable fighters fighting each other. It's old school. Both of them fought Joe Louis, by the way. Both of them from the time of Joe Louis. And one of them managed to beat Joe Louis, actually. The other one fought 2 fights against Joe Louis, and I think that it was very controversial because it was believed that Joe Louis actually lost the fight. Was gifted the decision.
The points.
Yeah, they say, I don't know. So, but just Joe Walcott gave him a lot of problems. It's actually, I think, probably the toughest opponent of Joe Louis. But Joe Louis was already past his best. Anyway, but just that you know, stylistically speaking, that's another beautiful thing about boxing. Styles make fights. This is where you can see the art of boxing. Because some styles of some fighters are going to be problematic. Okay, a style of one fighter can be very problematic to the other fighter, but not necessarily problematic to a different fighter.
I understand that.
It really depends. You see, it's like, and you could see it, you know, very well, I'll tell you where, with Ali, Foreman and Frazier. Think about it. George Foreman went against Joe Frazier, destroyed Frazier. Destroyed him. I mean, my God, what he did.
Even though he said he was one of the hardest punches.
Yeah, but still, did you see what he did to him? He knocked him down time after time after time after time. He threw him like a rag doll around the ring, and that was Joe Frazier, smoking Joe Frazier, an unbelievable fighter. So that's what George Foreman did to him. Then George Foreman went against Ali, who had hell against Joe Frazier, and Ali knocked out George Foreman.
Yeah.
So what it shows you, there is a triangle of styles here, and what it means is that you probably can say that Ali was the greatest because when it comes to that era, because he really managed to defeat Joe Frazier twice and he beat George Foreman, so he may be on the top of the triangle. But if you think about it, pressure fighters like Joe Frazier, who was throwing punches in volumes, and then Ali could not do much about him, considering his style so he's not really. Ali was not an orthodox fighter, but he was closer to what people want to believe as more of a boxer. Let's call it this way, you know, because of his past as a guy who could move, or was very slick. He was not an orthodox fighter. It was not a textbook fighter. I don't even think he was not technical by a textbook. He was just very naturally gifted. He did all kind of things. He used to hold his hand like that. He was not a textbook fighter, but against Frazier he had difficult time because Frazier was there for 15 rounds. He was willing to work very hard for 15 rounds and throw a lot of punches. And then, but Foreman, it was easier for him because Foreman, he knew that he's gonna, after the 4th round, if he's still there, then Foreman is gonna just decline. He already took everything out of his gas tank. but it was not the same
Fraser.
with Frazier. On the other, but then on the other hand, Frazier couldn't do much against George Foreman, because George Foreman, if he comes close to him, it's not like Ali that he could have just thrown all that. He comes close to Foreman.
No, finished.
You understand? That's what.
Yeah,
You don't come close to Foreman like that. So,
it's amazing.
yeah. So it's very interesting. You can learn a lot about it from that.
Okay,
Yes.
amazing. Well done.
Yes. So do you want maybe actually, I don't know if you got the time. Do you want to do some reviews of?
Yeah, listen.
I'll tell you what, because maybe we should keep it to some other time, but you might like what is happening here, because I
When
brought
you say your reviews, you mean reviews of?
some CDs that I managed to pick very cheaply in a second-hand shop. This is the beauty of it, that I didn't even have to go to a proper music shop to get some really good CDs. And
Okay, so let's do some reviews.
Okay.
Okay. So
I'll tell
before
you-
we start, let's just